Live from Las Vegas, it's theCUBE, covering Knowledge 16. Brought to you by ServiceNow. Here are your hosts, Dave Vellante and Jeff Frick.
Welcome back to Knowledge 16, everybody. This is theCUBE. theCUBE is SiliconANGLE's flagship program. We go out to the events. We extract the signal from the noise. Frank DeSantis is here. He's the CTO of the Hartford. And Saurabh Dubey is here. He's the director at KPMG. Gentlemen, welcome to theCUBE.
Glad to be here.
Knowledge 16, what's happening for you guys?
A lot. We're getting a lot done here, learning a lot. This is my first year here, actually. And thanks for the promotion, by the way. I'm the director of service management. I know they had CTO.
Oh, great. Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Come on theCUBE, good things happen.
You'll be the CIO before you know it.
I know.
So this is your first year, Frank?
We had put ServiceNow in a year ago, during last year's conference. So, yeah.
Well, how's it going?
It's going really well. It's been quite a year. We've got a lot done and got a lot more planned.
So we'll talk more about that. But Saurabh, what's your role at KPMG? And
So I'm a director with our CI advisory practice. We are the practice that kind of owns our ServiceNow alliance, and I'm a solution architect. I focus more around the build out of the solutions, and generally, clients like Hartford, and especially when we're talking about large enterprise scale implementations. There's a certain way to go about them, and I work with the team that kind of develops our methodology for it.
So you guys Frank called you out as one of the key partners, or day one.
Yeah,
so
we use KPMG as the implementation partner.
So how was that decision made? Actually, take us back, Frank, to the decision. So you had some guys here last year kicking the tires. Is this real? Talking to people.
Yeah. No, we had a strategic goal to SaaS, right? And so we were looking on the market first we were looking for the tool providers, and we narrowed it down to the two biggest SaaS providers for service management tools. We did a bake-off on that, and then we chose ServiceNow because the decision was obvious from a functionality and a experience perspective. And then we looked at the major partners with ServiceNow, and we narrowed it down to 3, and at the end of the day, we picked KPMG.
And you were replacing an existing tool set?
Yeah, we were replacing the BMC Remedy tool set, yes.
So when you bring in ServiceNow, are you retiring systems, or are you sort of people hanging on to the legacy? Or?
Yeah, it was a different experience in the sense that they talked about customer experience. It was very low with the product we were replacing. So it was easy to bring in ServiceNow because all of the users were very frustrated with the old technology. And so we did a lot of demos and got people excited about the new tool. And so that's how we made the decision and implemented it.
And from the SaaS perspective, do you have kind of a broader SaaS directive with your whole suite of applications, and this just happened to be one piece of it?
Yeah. We're an insurance company, right? And we don't want to own infrastructure, and we don't want to own applications. We just want to lease space, lease seats. So ServiceNow was an ideal solution. Prior to that, I implemented SaaS, our PPM, our project and portfolio management system, which is not ServiceNow at the moment. It's an HP system. But this whole strategic direction is to try and SaaS as much as possible.
Because we think of the stag, we talked about it a little bit, right? Hartford as a conservative, kind of old
Extremely
school
conservative.
Insurance company. So for you guys to really take kind of a cloud native approach and start to swap out on-prem stuff with cloud shows pretty progressive move.
It's progressive. We've been extremely cautious. A lot of security concerns around data and everything else. So it took us. It actually took us, we tried to go to ServiceNow like 3 years before the time we went to it, but they were not a publicly traded company. They were a very small company. And from that conservative approach, we decided not to do business until last year. Obviously, you guys know they've grown dramatically. They're publicly traded, so we were a lot more comfortable with it.
And Saurabh, what role does KPMG play in these types of implementations?
So I think we started off pretty much at the top of this one. We started with helping Frank and team build the business case for switching over from BMC to ServiceNow. And I was thinking when, Frank, you were talking about the whole customer experience piece, or consumer experience piece being so better, it was 2 days worth of workshops that we did just to see if people would get interested and try to get their requirements. The response we got was overwhelming. We had 2 days, 8 hours back to back, packed up with people coming in with their requirements of this is how we want to do it, but we're not able to at this point. So it started from the top, helping build a business case from a qualitative and quantitative point of view. I think even the internal rate of return was like huge on this on the
so big that it was embarrassing, right? You just didn't want
It was.
one of those deals, right? Don't show this to anybody; they'll not believe it, kind of thing, or
yeah. So
It kind of a whiteboard exercise in terms of if you start from scratch, here's how would you like your system to work, or what did you show them for 2 days to get them so excited?
It was not so much of a start from scratch. It was more around let's talk through what you have and what you want to be at, and let's find out how you'd get there. So the you have part was the 2-day workshops that I was talking about, but where do you want to get and how do you get there? Those exercises then happened over a period of time, and we kind of worked together to define the full roadmap of how this would get implemented over time as well.
We had 2 separate engagements. One was to help us do the business case, and the other one was actually implementation. Because we had, in our case, we believe it's a sizable implementation. There were 30,000 users, and
30,000 users.
30,000 users we had to convert. We did it in a 9-month period with KPMG's help. We had like an army of people onshore, offshore, and did a lot of people change management on that. And it was extremely successful implementation. It's
so. I before we come back, because I want to peel the onion on that a little bit. But the business case, can you talk about? Give us a high level as to what that looked like, and when you get these situations where IRRs or telephone numbers. A lot of times, conservative companies will just strike out anything that's soft dollars and go right to the hard dollars.
Yep.
Can you talk about that a little bit, add some color to the business case?
well, yeah, kind of.
Within the
We don't like to
conservative
share
nature.
numbers.
No, yeah, you don't have to share numbers, but just to get at a
was-
high level.
It was
it
extreme.
from
It was
productivity
extreme,
or?
extremely compelling, and we didn't use any soft numbers whatsoever.
Yeah.
But part of the business case was displacing a couple of systems, but it was also reversing an offshoring support decision. So we actually developed an in-house support team for the system because that turned out to be far less expensive to support it onshore than offshore. So if we looked at the whole package, we're talking about around a $2 million run rate a year savings. And, it's
And the
very
big chunk of
compelling.
that came from you guys, in order to service customers or whatever you're doing, you were staffing up offshore because
Right.
it's cheap. And then all of a sudden, wow,
Yeah.
we can automate.
We could automate and onshore, sometimes offshore looks better than it does because you've got a lower rate, but you're stuck to that 40-hour work week, right, versus doing it onshore. And we find that the people working on this system just love working on it, right? So they're far more productive than working on the previous system.
So it's a quality aspect, it's a morale aspect. Now,
Absolutely.
It's
whenever
also apples to apples kind of a thing. Sorry for interrupting.
No, please,
but,
yeah.
one of the things that we focused more on was if you're going to compare, if you're trying to build a business case, it's more than just, the numbers that appear obviously in front of you, right? It's not just the license cost, not just the cost of people. But when you have to go apples to apples, you have to look at, if I was to develop everything I'm getting in this solution that I'm going to need, what would that have cost me otherwise? So the apples to apples part in this case, I think that played a huge part as well.
So
Well,
really
okay.
looking down the road, not necessarily
this-
today, but what I'm
Right.
going to need down the road.
Yeah, we were kind of stagnant because we were very mature as far as having individual process owners for every process. We had multiple IT organizations. We brought them together over the past 5 or 10 years. We brought our process teams together. So we were very mature in our process structure, which gave us the ability to move faster. But we were stuck with the old technology because we could only go so far. So even though we knew what our ideal process was, we couldn't implement it in the old technology. And that was one of the dramatic improvements moving the ServiceNow. KPMG showed us how yeah, you can do that in the new system.
So you had to fit the process to the tool as opposed
Yes.
to the tool being flexible enough to fit whatever
Exactly.
process you wanted.
Yeah.
Did you have to do a lot of mods and to bring this in? Or?
No, we didn't. We really didn't do a lot of customizations. We have a large service catalog, so there's a lot of development. I wouldn't call them customizations around that service catalog. And we have a fair number, about 37 integrations to systems, because we didn't implement this as an isolated system. We embedded it, connected it to our ERP systems and other systems. So it's core of our whole IT systems.
Now I got to go back to something that Saurabh was saying, the apples to apples comment. That assumes that somebody was going to sign the check for that. Was that the assumption going in? Did you have the support of the CFO or whomever? Okay, we're going to do this no matter what. Now pick the best path. Is that right? Or
Yeah.
I think it was a 5-year plan that
Yeah.
so Hartford does a 5-year business case.
A
It's not
rolling 5-year
yeah.
architectural plan.
So when we built that, it showed that within maybe the next 2 years, the numbers wouldn't match. But the moment you cross the 4th year onwards on a rolling basis, the apples to apples starts playing a very big role in that. So yeah, the expectation was that if you didn't do this, 3 years from now, you're going to start losing money on it.
I love business cases like this that can justify themselves on hard dollars. You can strike out the soft dollars because it's always easier to get approved. But the reality is when you go implement, and I wonder if you could confirm this or deny it, but the soft dollar value oftentimes dwarfs the couple of $1 million that you're going to save. Is that what you found?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We found considerably more savings than we expected from a soft perspective, but it's very hard to tie that to dollars, and
Right.
in our particular company, we can't even talk about, well, I avoided 10 Sev 1 incidents this year, which would have cost you X number of dollars.
Throw them out of the meeting. Get out.
So unless you can give them a code that it's coming out of, you can't talk about it.
Right. You sign up for more budget or less budget in that
Right.
case. So, okay, so now, so it's been a year, you said?
Yes. Yeah.
I got to ask the mulligan question. And if you had a mulligan, what would you take it on, or would you do anything differently?
No, actually not. We decided to do the big bang, do everything at once, because it amazes me that some people say, well, I'm going to do the CMDB first and this other thing second. All that stuff is so integrated, you really can't do it separately, because you draw out your problem and you actually cost more money to implement it. So we, in 9 months, converted everything: incident, problem, change, asset management, release,
And the big
discovery.
internal comms effort and training effort, and we're hearing that over and over, that you really need to have a kind of a support behind that.
We spent a lot of time and money using KPMG's change management resources, and we can't say enough about that. They did an incredible job, people change management, because we literally had to train at different levels, but all 30,000 employees.
And you had a flop over date.
Yep.
On a particular day, you switched.
Yeah.
And they were there. So people in change, they focus on behavioral change management and training. Right. So they were involved from day one. It's not like we had to bring them in halfway through the project. They were involved from day one because they had to understand what were they checking for, right? The organization, as big as this, there's definitely some detractors. So the whole readiness assessment, understanding where this could potentially become an issue, catching that ahead of time and solving all those things, all of that was part of what they were doing.
So substantial project, 30,000 people. When you do a conversion like this, I guess it's not like a COBOL to mainframe to something, but do you have to freeze anything, freeze code or freeze process? Or?
Well, we freeze 3 months into this project. When we start, we freeze the current environment. So
Okay.
we're only processing incidents, no enhancements, no changes to the current environment. In one aspect, it's kind of easier because we're abandoning an old system. So it's not like I'm having to upgrade it. So I'm building a new one and then moving people onto the new one. So we were able to keep the old one up and running for 3 months to run off tickets. So you didn't have to convert tickets. So that was helpful.
And then the only thing you lost is the new enhancements.
Right.
Not really, because the new enhancements that were being requested were now going to the new tool. So
Yeah, but the new tool wasn't up yet, right?
Yeah, but the requirements would.
So they were
I think the
postponed.
timeline
Yeah.
was, anyways,
was
right
quick.
about. If somebody gave a requirement, it would have taken 3 to 5 months to actually build that requirement in
right.
anyways.
Right.
So
Okay, so it was a net neutral. So it didn't affect the business case negatively at all, that freeze?
No, we had a task from our CTO. Yeah, you can do this if it pays for itself.
But
it did.
But finish that sentence if you would. If it pays for itself, if it pays for itself in 5 years, he's going to say no. But so what kind of?
So in a 5-year CBA, we're making money. At the first year, after the first year, we're saving money. So it paid for itself within 2 years.
So you're breaking even that fast, and the net present value is enormous.
Yeah.
Right, with something of that size. Interesting that you chose. I'm intrigued by your comments about we just did a whole house. Because it's somewhat antithetical to this notion of you hear today agile, take it in small chunks, et cetera, but sometimes that just doesn't make sense. It makes sense if you're going to do it, do it.
Well, that's the whole thing with service management. As you can see, it's totally integrated. It's hard to take a piece out. Like, if I say I'm going to do change management first, talking to some people, well, how can you do that without your CMDB, right? You can't. Well, yeah, we can do it manually, but you don't get the savings, and you put more risk into the situation if you don't take at least those core service management functions in a bundle and move them in together.
And we're not talking about completely, leaving aside the agile methodology. Once the first big bang happens, then the approach it becomes more of a hybrid agile, because at that point you start your incremental updates, the new enhancements that are coming in, start following in that cycle. The first big bang, because the scenario that we had to be done in one strong integrated way. Again, leaving a solution which was built over 7-8 years. So going from there, you have to bring in a big bang approach, but then from that point onwards, you have to show the agility and say, we're going to do this very quickly. You're going to have shorter releases for enhancements as opposed to the first one.
We're in a very agile. We do a release every week. It's like the presentation the other day. We have a train that leaves every Thursday night. If you're on it, you're going into production the next day.
You're pushing code every week?
Every week.
Yeah, so you're right. That's not antithetical to agile. It's you know what it is? It's this. We talk a lot of startups, and they don't have the money to do a big bang, so they have no choice
they don't have 30,000
to take it
either.
a piece at a time. So that's true. So what about that whole Scrum and Agile? That's a sort of cultural change that has been affecting your life at the Hartford.
It is,
right?
and we're looking at that, and we did, like Saurabh said, a hybrid approach to implementing it because it was such a large project. But from a ServiceNow evolution perspective, we're totally in an agile environment and how we release code and how we have our testers. From a Hartford's perspective, we're looking at agile and DevOps in a larger sense right now, outside of service management, but obviously it will integrate with service management.
So we see the developer conference going on, and how does, and I think I'm correct, and the Hartford has a pretty big development team and pretty high quality, and so how do they fit into the whole ServiceNow? Because these guys talk a lot about low code or no code, but if you're intense code, you can go for it. What are the developers saying about ServiceNow as a platform?
Well, the developers use ServiceNow to process incidents, changes, release, to do application support. From a development perspective, they're outside of ServiceNow. As part of our DevOps initiative, we're going to be integrating with whatever PPM tools and whatever development tools we align on, because right now that's another initiative that's going on outside of service management, but we're part of that because we need to support it. So we're looking to rationalize our development tools and testing tools and get more a DevOps perspective from our customer application development teams. But all of those teams use ServiceNow on a daily basis to move code into production, to process incidents.
So when I think about the application, what the application portfolio must look like at the Hartford, Dan McGee this morning, I don't know if you saw his keynote, but he threw out an IDC number that said sometimes organizations have thousands or tens of thousands of apps. You're one of those organizations, clearly.
I'll give you a amount, somewhere between 1,400 and 2,000 apps.
Yeah, okay. And then you can sort of think about those in suites, and you got claims, and you got your agent systems, and et cetera, et cetera. We've heard a lot yesterday in particular, and some today, about service management touching, the third estate.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you?
We're integrated, so we use a different tool. The architects use a tool to manage that application portfolio as far as the attributes. This is what the application does. These are the processes. These are the owners. And we've integrated that into ServiceNow. We have a nightly feed into ServiceNow where we take those applications and we create different environments and we relate them to the infrastructure. And then we connect it on the back end and it goes directly into finance for monthly chargebacks. So we've integrated the front end and the back end, but by doing that within ServiceNow, we also can track incidents against applications, incidents against service, and not just infrastructure.
And you said chargebacks. You're doing chargebacks, not showbacks, or?
We're doing chargebacks. We did showbacks prior to ServiceNow, and now we're doing chargebacks. And we do it based on the relationships in the ServiceNow CMDB between the applications and the infrastructure components that comprise that.
We got to go. I got like a million more questions, but all right, both of you guys give you the last word. So just your thoughts on Knowledge 16. Frank, your first time here.
Well, it's very impressive, right? It's an amazing size of a crowd. I don't think I'll ever eat food here again because the walk is too far. So I'd rather pay for my lunch. But I like some of the keynote thoughts, and ServiceNow really needs to get out there and talk more about being outside of that core service management function and more about the end-to-end integration. I think that's a huge opportunity.
And Saurabh, how about you? What's kind of the bumper sticker in the show from KPMG's perspective?
Well, this is my fifth Knowledge. So I've been here pretty much as long as you have been here, I guess.
Fourth for us.
Fourth for us.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I was in New Orleans, the first one. But I think we're seeing that evolution of clients going from, let's start with ITSM, then let's turn it over. It's almost like the ownership of the platform, ownership of ServiceNow inside organizations moves from the ITSM group to the platform group. And that's when the third estate really kind of starts playing out, because they start thinking about what else can we do with this. And the whole, what Frank said about this is, we can do much more than just ITSM. ITSM is just the starting point of it. We're starting to see that turn happen with a lot of our clients as well.
Great. Well, Saurabh and Frank, thanks very much for coming to theCUBE and sharing your story. So it's a good one.
Thanks for having us.
All right, keep it right there, everybody. We'll be back with our next guest right after This is theCUBE. We're live from Knowledge 16. See you right.
Every once in a while, a true break